Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you are watching this video. Welcome back to Starkey Farmstead. So my name is Samantha, and we need to talk about this. Let's talk about how just in the month of August of 2025, the EPA was documented having not only lied about a private scientist researching in East Palestine, Ohio, after the train derailment, but how they actually went after him, basically creating a smear campaign and a stalking situation against a citizen scientist looking for the truth, and how that relates to what just happened in Roseland, Louisiana, at a refinery of hydrocarbons known as Smitty's. Now let's get into this. Friday, the 22nd of August, Smitty's exploded. To my knowledge, we don't know exactly what happened yet, but Smitty's is located right beside a huge and often used railroad track. In a community of only a few thousand people, it employed over 400 employees and has been in business for 60 plus years. I just saw an update from the Louisiana State Police 30 minutes ago. Says Region 1 news release, August 24th, 2025. Multi-agency emergency response to chemical release in Roseland. And it says that the fire is now 90% contained at Smitty Supply Incorporated. Additional resources, including specialized heavy equipment, have arrived. Response crews began removing structural debris and addressing covered hotspots. A containment berm is being established around the site, and recovery operations will continue throughout the day. Environmental response efforts are ongoing in the Tangipahoa River and surrounding waterways. Local, state, and federal agencies, along with contracted responders, have deployed approximately 1,900 feet of containment boom in the river and 100 feet in nearby drainage ditch. 8 airboats are supporting recovery. 2 frac tanks containing a combined 900 barrels of fluids have been recovered. So that's 1,800 barrels of fluids just recovered out of the Tangipahoa River. In the last 18 hours, additional drone surveys and 2 aerial assessments were conducted. As of this release, all air monitoring results have shown either non-detectable readings or levels well below health-based or actionable thresholds. How many of you believe that? How many of you believe what we saw burning 3 miles straight into the sky for over 48 hours now has absolutely no health issues, long-term or short-term? How many of you actually believe that? I'm curious. Put it in comments. Tell me what you think. By the way, recently, our book, a book I co-authored with somebody, was published, Growing Under a Poisoned Sky. And in this book, without realizing, because that's how the Holy Spirit works, that in my own community, this would become an issue. I talk about toxins from Maui all the way through, but there's an entire section of this book on how to clean your soil and your water. Guys, you can purchase this book anywhere. If you'd like a signed autograph, I am selling a couple. I'm actually not selling, I'm auctioning them to the highest bidders with my autograph, because my husband has a brain aneurysm and we've got some days we're going to have to miss for work coming up. And I'm trying to, build up money so that we can stay afloat through that time. Here's the problem I have. So on Facebook, I was telling people you really need to get the book. And a woman thought she was going to come underneath and go, well, I really hope this is for free, because, we should come together as a community. I spent 6 months writing this book. It cost me $4,000 out of my pocket to get it published. No, the book is not for free. I went to college for 10 years. I paid for that, right? I took ongoing classes through the USDA and farm organizations and nonprofits at my own expense to become an expert in this field. The book is very affordable. I highly encourage all of you to purchase it. August 23rd, 2025, update. So this was what I was just talking to you guys about. Here's my concern, okay? It says here, an initial wildlife hotline has been established to assist with impacted wildlife. The hotline number is 832-514-9663. Calls will be managed by an operator, and all information provided will immediately transmitted to the environmental unit leader, the state and U.S. wildlife agencies. Do not attempt to capture or handle any impacted wildlife. Now, the responsible party, Smitty's, is still developing a dedicated claims hotline, right? So you guys are waiting for that, the ones of you that were directly affected. The mandatory evacuation order remains in effect for a 1-mile radius around the incident site, in addition to TFR, temporary flight restrictions, of over 5,000 feet above surface level, prohibiting all unauthorized aircraft, including drones, from entering the restricted airspace. Here are pictures. You guys see this? Okay. All of this has been affected. You see this stuff all in the water, these chemicals? Those are chemicals. This is foam. Here's my problem. The foam that they use contains PFAS and PFOs, forever chemicals, folks. This is where the EPA is right now. This just came out. This is breaking news out of East Palestine when they had the train derailment 2 years ago.
Is supposed to be keeping our air and our water clean, not conducting surveillance and smear campaigns against independent scientists. And yet, in a News Nation exclusive, newly released emails show that is what was happening after the East Palestine train disaster in February of 2023. The target? An environmental scientist whose tests contradicted the EPA's narrative that there were no dangerous levels of toxins in the area. Local residents were told the official story. Their neighborhoods were safe, and some of those who dared to disagree found themselves in the EPA's crosshairs. This is just the latest example of EPA issues in East Palestine, and News Nation has stayed on top of the story. Just last month, we showed you how a report found the agency in Norfolk Southern manipulated soil testing data following the disaster. News Nation investigative correspondent Rich McHugh has the latest for us.
That drone just came over us now, didn't it?
Yep.
When environmental scientist Scott Smith began testing for toxins in East Palestine, drones were monitoring his movements. Someone was watching. Because months after the open burn of vinyl chloride and after the EPA told residents it was safe to come home, his test results showed exactly the opposite. Smith found extremely elevated levels of dioxins in the soil in East Palestine. In the spring of 2023, after we reported Smith's findings, and former EPA Administrator Judith Enck said the EPA should pay attention to Smith's test results.
His work should encourage the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency now to go and grab some other filters and do similar testing and analysis.
But that's not what happened. Instead, EPA emails show the agency began collecting Smith's personal information, tracking his movements, distributing his whereabouts to more than 50 EPA employees. They even circulated photos of his dog.
It's troubling because
They went too far with the dog. Do you know what I'm saying? Look, it's one thing. Harass people, I get it. But now you're harassing his dog? Seriously, EPA? Folks, I have said it on my channel so many times. The fourth arm of the United States government that's not in the Constitution, we didn't vote on it, are these bureaucratic officials. If you didn't realize the EPA, the USDA, they have tremendous power. If they come onto your ranch land or your private land, test your water after the Smitty's explosion and find that you have PFAS in your soil. Now, understand, it's got nothing to do with you. You didn't cause the explosion and you didn't use the foam to put the fire out. But if they do and they find that, do you understand that they can technically condemn your property? Yeah. You don't believe me? You better start researching, friends and family of the internet, people in my community. This is way more serious than you realize.
This is a matter of transparency and truth and protecting public health. What the EPA seems to have done here in East Palestine is they were more interested in controlling the narrative and controlling what was going out to the community, from the community and back to the community. They were definitely controlling the narrative of nothing to see here, no long-term health impact.
Smith continued to test on over 30 trips to East Palestine. RFK Jr. met with him in East Palestine and called him an extraordinary advocate for the people. Smith says taxpayer dollars should be spent on testing, not surveilling him.
They don't want to look for the full spectrum of chemicals that I look for. And instead of sitting down with me and having a dialogue for the benefit of the community, they launched this, smear and campaign and undermining it. It's, it's pretty clear in their own words. They're clearly not serving the community they're supposed to protect. And it's not just East Palestine, Rich. It's a systemic thing.
The emails show the EPA was also tracking residents, too.
It's a systemic thing. Now, here's the concerning thing for me. The EPA, to my knowledge, are using the exact same testing that they used in East Palestine in 2023. They're using that exact same testing today, August 24th, 2025, in Southeast Louisiana. Now, if it showed that it was safe for residents to return after what happened in East Palestine, do you see how it's going to say the same thing for residents of Amite City, residents of Roseland, residents of Arcola, residents north and south within so many miles of this chemical plant? And the truth is, they have not updated their testing. They are not testing for the correct type of chemical composition. And I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. Don't go anywhere, because this is how we beat them. We become knowledgeable in how they play their game, so that when you're asking these EPA specialists and the DEQ questions, you know what to ask, and then you know what you're looking for in the response, so they don't speak over your head like they like to do.
Spoken voices in the community like Jamie Wallace. She was included in some of the agency's weekly social listening reports.
They tried to control this narrative and act like none of us had any long-term health risk, and we're not stupid. We see it. We feel it.
The EPA said in a statement, "We are very concerned by claims that have come to light over the past few months. The Trump administration is committed to maximum transparency, and as such, we intend to conduct a thorough review of decisions made in the aftermath of the train derailment. We will work to ensure the health and safety of the people of East Palestine." Wallace says that's not good enough. She has a message for the current administration.
I say it's never too late to try to right a wrong. We know, everyone knows. The EPA knows, the government knows, the U.S. citizens know that we got screwed. From the beginning, there were mistakes made. There were flaws, but you just don't continue to cover those up and forget about a whole community that's now gone from symptoms to long-term illnesses. What you do is you try to make that right.
In speaking with residents and with Smith, they say this ultimately proves what they knew all along. Now they say they want solutions and that it's time for a congressional investigation. Elizabeth?
All right.
I don't want that for my community, which is why I'm doing these videos. Why I will be actually going out this evening to take videos of the local riverways, waterways, and documenting everything that I see on video. Now, this I found very interesting for the people in my community, for you guys who are not in my community, but you know what happened in California in January with the fires when there were, literally no fire hydrants, right? Then we know in Maui, there were fire hydrants, but there was no water. How about this? Amite leaders talk annexation plans, new city hall and police station. This was March 18th, 2025. This is why documentation is so important. What I found most interesting about this entire dialogue is this. Let me get it. Also under discussion were the city's aging fire hydrants, an issue Councilwoman Shirley Core has previously raised. Her concern is when firefighters respond to a structure fire, the nearest fire hydrant may be inoperable, creating what could be life-threatening situations. When and if your house catches on fire and then you get to the closest fire hydrant and it does not work, then you have to go locate one that does work, and it's a major problem. It's important these hydrants are working. We have to have these hydrants working. The people of Amite deserve working hydrants. Amite Fire Chief J.D. Stevens said that after Core had expressed her concerns during the February meeting, he had a list compiled of the hydrants not working. But he also pointed out repairs are not an easy process. He said the city has received a $35,000 grant to complete some of the work, but those funds will be insufficient to cover the entire city. Stevens said the money will be used to install some kind of valve on some of the old quarry hydrants to gauge their effectiveness. The original valves on the quarry hydrants used from the 1880s until 1969 were the slide gate design, but research shows that they have been since updated to a toggle action valve. Stevens said one concern is that once turned on, the water not be able to shut off at the hydrant with the original valves. The plan is to use the money to replace the old valves with the new models and thereby determine if the hydrant can be back in service. He goes on to complain that nobody works on old hydrants, right? And a new hydrant's $4,500. He said the city has a total of 215 fire hydrants, 25 of which are quarry hydrants, which appear to have been installed in 1948. We're not saying you can't use the old hydrants for a fire. We're saying that if you do use them, you might not be able to shut them back off. They have department as hoses that extend several thousand feet from one hydrant to another, can be in place within minutes. I'm just saying, the fire that happened at Smitty's was 4 miles from Amite City. So I'm wondering what fire hydrants were used for the Smitty's fire. Does Roseland even have fire hydrants? In my small parish, St. Helena Parish, which butts up to Tangipahoa Parish, I did a video, I don't know, maybe 6-8 months ago, talking about how they shut down most of the volunteer fire departments in my community. You have a parish of 23,000 people, and we don't even have one 24-hour, people in the firehouse ready to go fire department. 23,000 people. This just goes to show, how can you put plants and refineries in areas that don't even have working trained fire departments? This is the problem with America. It's not that we have plants. Yes, we need those jobs, right? We need the oil. The problem is the concern that if a fire starts, how are you going to put it out? I'm just asking. Now let's talk a little more about the EPA and how they really messed up with the East Palestine issue. Because like I said, they're still using the same testing. So that was August 19th of 2025, exactly 2 years ago. Goes on to say that internal emails from the Environmental Protection Agency, known as the EPA, was systematically tracking and attempting to discredit an independent scientist who found high levels of toxins. So the EPA said, hey, we tested the water, the soil, the air. You can return home. No contaminants found. That was not true. It was a lie. People are sick. I'm seeing that same nonsense in my community right now. There is no way. What we saw bellowing in the sky, the headache that I got immediately when I was within 5 miles of that fire, that there is nothing dangerous about that, or the soot that came down with the rain when the storm started at the same time. Go figure. Because Smith's findings contradicted what the EPA said at the time, right? They basically began to hound this man. Let me find it for you guys. It says here, here it is. It's troubling because this is a matter of transparency and truth and protecting public health. That is what the EPA is supposed to do, not protect themselves when they make a mistake, not protect the billion-dollar industries, the million-dollar industries, or the companies that are causing these environmental disasters in our rural communities. What the EPA seems to have done here in East Palestine is that they were more interested in controlling the narrative and controlling what was going out to the community. Smith has been to East Palestine more than 30 times to test. He met with now Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in East Palestine, who called him an extraordinary advocate for the people there. All right. Here's what I want you guys to focus on. They don't want to look for the full spectrum of chemicals that I look for. What is he talking about? When he says, I'm looking for a full spectrum of chemicals, we're fixing to get into that. Don't go anywhere. This is important. I want you guys to look at these pictures with me. All right, because I think you guys have to understand what I'm trying to say to you. An explosion has rocked a chemical plant in Louisiana, sparking a raging inferno and sending thick black smoke bellowing into the air. Right? Of course, there are health concerns. Look at this. Look at this and tell me how the EPA, while this is going on, is saying that there's no contaminants. Look at this. It got hot enough to melt a fire truck. Look at this, friends. The explosion at the Smitty supply plant that manufactures lubricants for vehicles took place on Friday afternoon, but officials are still fighting to extinguish the blaze. An update Saturday night and again Sunday morning says the fire is 90% contained. No one was injured in the shocking incident, and that's a godsend. However, as the fire continues to burn at the plant, sending chemicals into the sky, locals say they're being showered with oil and reporting concerning health issues. The reports are there. There's a gentleman on Facebook. If you follow me at Starkey Formstead on Facebook or just my personal page, it doesn't matter. There's a gentleman that has reached out to the EPA and the DEQ, and he's like, hey, I am losing hundreds of fish in my ponds. My dairy cattle, their knees are covered in this black stuff. Their mouths are covered in it. Nobody's getting back in touch with him. Government officials have said that air monitoring air quality levels in the area, and that so far, this is no danger. Who in their right mind believes that this has nothing in it that is dangerous to us? We're not ignorant. You're not ignorant. Listen to me, friend. You're either going to believe your lying eyes or your lying ears. That's what my daddy would tell you. Look at that smoke. It went 3 miles up into the sky and spread. People were getting oil or soot, smut, whatever you want to call it, on their vehicles 30 miles away from this when the storm clouds rolled through. Do you honestly want to tell me that this is not toxic? Seriously. Okay, so then why is the government telling us that? This is still ongoing situation, and we urge all in the area to continue following evacuation guidance. Everyone living within 1 mile of the plant has been evacuated from their homes, and an elementary school was closed on Friday with a shuttle bus ferrying children to a nearby town. But still, those living in nearby areas have reported rain mixed with oil falling on their homes and vehicles. Stout, who has been diagnosed with asthma and lung disease, said the impact of the air quality on her body has been really bad. The pair fled their home to Amite City, almost 3 miles south of Roseland, where others have also gone. Ross Cutrer arrived at the safe zone and immediately took his vehicle to a car wash on Saturday morning to remove the unusual black substance. So here's another problem. People are immediately going to car washes, using the scrub brushes, washing that down into the drains. Where do the drains empty in these small communities? Directly into the ditches. Where do the ditches empty? Into the creeks. Where do the creeks empty? Into the rivers. You can taste it in the air. On Saturday, Sergeant William Hugging from Louisiana State Police told reporters that air monitoring showed no non-detect levels or results above any actionable thresholds. Look at this and tell me how that is a true statement. I'm going to tell you how they get away with it. Locals have already refuted that claim, with Jamie David DeLafter writing on Facebook, right, convincing people that live only 2 miles away might be tricky. Our yard is covered in oil. The air quality is very likely to not be safe. He later added that one of his dogs had started wheezing and that the air quality was irritating him and his children's asthma. His previous posts show pictures of thick oil covering the ground, the American flag hanging outside of his home and the porch after it rains oil for over 45 minutes. The plant stores ethanol, charcoal lighter fluid, gas oil mixture, motor oil, lubricants, hydraulic fluid, diesel, brake fluid, grease, several unnamed water-based chemicals. I can't even believe this. That is a hydrocarbon refinery. It is not yet known what caused the explosion, which employs 400 people. One has already been established for wildlife impacted by chemicals. Here's the 832-514-9663. Meanwhile, water samples are being collected to assess how runoff and oily rain is impacting the wider water quality, notably that of the Tangipahoa River, which runs through Roseland. Look at this. This was not a small plant. Look at this. Notice how they're being honest. They're focused on the Tangipahoa River, but what about these small farmsteads, homesteads, ranchers, farmers? Guys, if you look it up, what is the biggest money-making industry for Tangipahoa Parish, St. Helena Parish? It's agriculture. It's our land. Now look at this. Officials are, to put up, look at the cars burnt. Look at the foam. Looks like snow, right? That is PFAS. I had a lady that was very kind enough to go to the scene and send me pictures on Facebook of that foam running off into the drainage on the roads and right down into the nearest ditch. I have video of all of it. Where do the ditches dump? Into the creeks into the rivers. Yeah, you're seeing the point here. Again, folks, you can find our book. It's also on Kindle. You can get it at Walmart. It's called Growing Under a Poison Sky. It's got the big, beautiful sunflower for a reason, right? If you would like to support our channel, YouTube does not pay me. They haven't paid me in 5 months because I'm too honest. You can look in the top of comments, donate whatever you can. Like I said, you guys already know that every time there's a disaster, I give to the community. So as I begin to have money come in, I'll look for those who really do need help that cannot get it. Because of course, people say, well, Trump dismantled FEMA. FEMA hasn't even shown up. They're not worried about us. I do want to show you something. Now, of course, this came out of California government. And I don't like California, but there's one thing I do like about California is how funny they are about the environment. The Department of Toxic Substance. For you guys wondering why the EPA is now saying that the air, and they're going to say the water and the soil is clean too, even though you're watching things get sick and die. This is why. It goes on to say, the guidance is not intended to limit investigations at sites with a history of other hazardous material uses and does not diminish the need to collect authoritative samples at additional site locations commonly associated with on-site and off-site hazardous substance releases, all right? It's called a technical framework for evaluating a TPH. Now, a TPH, friends and family, is a total petroleum hydrocarbon. Smitty's was a hydrocarbon refinery and plant. Okay, they even had antifreeze, and we all know that antifreeze is toxic. So a total petroleum hydrocarbon, TPH, remember that. A quantitative risk evaluation of total petroleum hydrocarbons should be performed regardless of its concentrations at a site. All right, now here's what I want you to understand. Risk assessment for TPH presents a number of challenges. Out of the hundreds of chemicals in TPH, only a very small portion have been tested for toxicity. This is what I'm telling you. The EPA goes out there, they're going to test for 6 or 7 different chemicals. That's it. Even though there are hundreds of chemicals and hydrocarbons, hundreds of chemical combinations, that this chemical, just say hydrogen, is not toxic and oxygen is not toxic separate. But if you combine them, they're now toxic. I know that's an example that didn't make sense, but that's what I'm trying to get you to understand. Furthermore, although some petroleum products, such as wholly vaporized unleaded gasoline, may have undergone toxicity testing, the product in the environment is likely to have undergone weathering and therefore is a different composition than that was originally tested. So they're going out there and they're looking for unleaded gasoline in the water. It's not going to show up as unleaded gasoline in the water. One, it's going through a chemical process of burning, right? That's what the fire did. It burnt it, right? And now it's been weathered because it's been combined with other chemicals out in the sun, in the water, and in the air. So it is no longer the same composition than what it was originally. Unleaded gasoline. It is now something totally different. It's no longer just oil. It has gone through a fire and a weathering and a combination of mixing with other chemicals. It is no longer just oil. Therefore, the results of the original testing may not be applicable for the weathered product. Moreover, sites that have multiple petroleum products or waste present additional considerations. TPH may refer to a variety of products or waste. However, for the purpose of risk assessment, TPH is generally grouped into 3 ranges according to the number of carbon atoms: TPH gasoline, TPH diesel, TPH motor oil, residential range. In some analyses, TPH may be reported in small incremental hydrocarbon ranges, but generally, TPH is most often grouped into 3 ranges in the above mentioned, plus total hydrocarbons. So it goes on to say here, TPH is usually present in the environment as a result of accidental spills, waste disposal, leaks from storage tanks, or other types of releases. It may also be found as a result of oil seepage from naturally occurring underground reservoirs of oil. All right, we can agree to that. Concentrations of TPH in the environment may vary greatly, from low parts per million ppm in surface soils where gasoline has been spilled in small quantities to greater than 1,000 ppm in areas where crude oil has been stored or fuel leaks from pipelines or underground storage, or where there's been an explosion. TPH mixtures in the environment undergo a process called weathering, in which natural processes such as volatilization or degradation occur, thereby changing the chemical composition of the original environmental contamination. During this process, the lighter hydrocarbons, smaller molecular weight, decrease in concentrations, while relative concentrations of higher molecular weight and carbon number, hydrocarbons and residual TPH increase. The longer the TPH remains in the environment and is subjected to weathering, the less the TPH mixture resembles the product or waste that was originally spilled, leaked, or released. In other words, the longer this crap stays in our soil and into our rivers, the longer it's going to match what came from the fire. There is something called fingerprint. There are companies that will trace a TPH, a hydrocarbon, through its weathering process, through the environmental mixing, through the weathering, through all of it, back to its original source. It's called fingerprint tracing. They do this because they understand this is how chemical plants get away with this. This is how explosions get listed as there's nothing toxic here. We can go, they're not on the line for the next 40 years of cancer and birth defects and issues with the environment. The government knows this. The chemical company knows this. The EPA knows this, but how many of you knew this? Goes on to talk about the soil, surface soil matrix, subsurface soil, background metals. The presence of metals in soil may be due to natural processes or may be from, human activities. So you've got to be able to have an area where you're seeing what natural metals are there and then what the spill has added, what toxic metals are now in our water that weren't there before. You've got to have a control sample. Sampling water for TPH and associated contaminants should follow the same general guidance as described in section 3.1 with regard to what COPCs to look for. In addition, some oxygenants, such as MTBE, may be more of a concern in the site area than some of the others often found in the soil at site. Many site investigations do not need to include an investigation of groundwater, especially in the initial stage, because groundwater is too deep to have been contaminated by site contaminants, or because any releases were not significant in size. Friends and family, there's a huge water aquifer underneath St. Helena. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know if it goes underneath Roseland or Ament City, but I know it goes all the way through St. Helena. Eventually, everything that just burned and all that foam is going to work its way down to that water aquifer. How long is that going to take? Are they still going to be testing a year from now the groundwater that we're drinking? Because that's what happened in East Palestine. They were done with all their testing within a month or two. Within the first week, they're like, oh, you guys can come back, you're perfectly fine. And now people are like dying in East Palestine. And they're realizing the EPA was wrong the entire time. Is that what's fixing to happen to us in South Louisiana? I pray not. I pray not, friends and family of the internet. Then it goes on here. This is what I really want you to understand. This was done in 2024. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency has finalized a key update to the federal air quality standard for fine soot. Everything that was raining down on people's cars, showing up in their waterways and in their ponds, that is soot, all right? It's not necessarily just oil, it's soot. The The standards announced Wednesday are one of several important finalized regulations coming from the EPA this year focused on both improving air quality and cutting down on planet warming pollution. Okay? Understand this right here. The current standard, which has been in place for more than a decade, limits the average annual amount of fine particle pollution to 12 micrograms per cubic meter of air. The EPA would reduce that limit to 9 micrograms. So right now, I don't know if they actually went through with that. I don't know if the air testing that they're doing in Roseland is 12 micrograms per cubic meter, or if it's 9. But either way, it's not enough. Listen to this. The agency estimates the limit will prevent 4,500 premature deaths and avoid around 800,000 cases of asthma if they go down 3 parts per million. The stronger air quality standard announced today is grounded in the best available science, right? Or is that true? Because the World Health Organization recommends 5 micrograms per cubic meter of air. Doing so, the organization said, could reduce deaths associated with fine particle pollution by 80%. Here is the problem. What tests are the EPA doing on the air? Are they doing fine particle pollution? And if they are they testing that at 12, at 9, but not at 5, right? What is the point of America and our government paying to be part of the World Health Organization if we aren't going to use their data, right? So here's my concern. Again, how many of you believe that black crap that was in the air is not going to hurt you? Because here is what they say. Fine particle matter, also called PM 2.5, pollutes outdoor air when a variety of fossil fuels are burned, including gas, diesel, and oil. What just blew up at Smitty's, friends and family of the internet, fellow community members? Oil, gas, and diesel, plus plastic, and now PFAS. It is the tiniest pollutant, significantly smaller than fine sand, dust, and pollen, but it is minuscule size, makes it one of the most dangerous to human health. When inhaled, it can travel deep into your lung tissue, where it can either enter your bloodstream and contribute to cardiovascular disease, asthma, and other respiratory illnesses. Exposure to this pollution has been linked to an increased risk of lung cancer in people who have never smoked. Scientists recently found a possible mechanism for that increased risk. Some air pollution particles may promote mutations in cells in your airways. The EPA is required by law to update the standards for fine particle pollution every 5 years. And according to the latest available science, the last time they updated was under the Obama administration in 2012. That's over 10 years, where they lowered it from 15 to 12. The new standard was criticized by industry groups, having described it as burdensome and difficult to meet. The standards were not tightened during the Trump administration, which promoted an outcry among environmental and public health groups. The American Lung Association said it's a step forward, but the standards do fall short for what the Lung Association called for. Millions of people put their health at risk every time they step outside. After a steady decline in U.S. pollution levels, the number of people living in counties with failing grades for daily spikes in particle pollution has the highest it's been in a decade, and that was in 2023. Nearly 64 million Americans live in these counties, and communities of color bear the brunt. No amount of exposure to particle pollution is healthy. Exposure can lead to cancer, stroke, heart problems, vascular issues. It can aggravate asthma and is linked to neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and other dementias. People exposed to higher amounts of this pollution for longer periods also have an increased risk of depression and anxiety. Exposure even can contribute to problems thinking clearly. Scientists believe that particle pollution can shorten your life. The number of people killed or disabled by certain heart problems caused by exposure to air pollution has risen since 1990. Generally, a 2019 study found that exposure to air pollution has linked to more than 107,000 premature deaths in the United States in 1 year, with a PM 2.5 accounting for the most damage to people's health. That's more than the number of people killed each year in traffic accidents and combined homicides. Here it is. Since particles of pollution are so tiny, 1/20th of a strand of human hair. So 1/20th of this right here. And you guys are wearing paper and plastic, paper and cloth masks. Do you think that's going to help this? These particles cause irritation, inflammation, and damage to cells. It may also affect the central nervous system and cause the body to release harmful substances that can hurt the blood-brain barrier. The network of blood vessels and tissues made up of closely spaced cells that protect the brain. Negative health effects were often seen at pollution levels much lower than the current U.S. ambient air quality standards. So in other words, they're telling us that we're perfectly okay, but their standards are too high. And soot is caused from wildfires, which are fueled by hot and dry temperatures, whatever. They're saying that. But I'm going to tell you right now, the soot you guys got came from these hydrocarbons. It is not okay. This is serious, friends and family of the internet. I cannot express to you enough how disgusted I am by the EPA trying to tell me that when I'm looking at that black cloud, that there's nothing there that's going to hurt me or hurt you. I even reached out to the Louisiana State Police Department email and said, look, I would like to be a community liaison. I just published a book on this. I would like to work with you. Whatever skills, whatever expertise I have, it is yours to use. I got a letter back. I posted it both on Facebook and YouTube. No, thank you. We don't need any help. No, what you don't need is somebody that understands what you're doing, understands how the chemical change has happened, and that the test that the EPA and the DEQ are doing in the river is testing for something that's really not even going to show up. But the test that you need to use, you refuse to do because you want to open and shut case. You want to do a quick settlement, and then you guys want to move on. In 20 years, when people come back and say, what is going on? You want to say there's no fingerprint. You can't prove it. I rebuke all of you in positions of power that is dealing with this. You need to bring on community liaison people, second sets of eyes. We need community outreach. We need you guys going to agricultural fields. We need boots on the ground, and we need it now. The longer you leave this crap in our environment, the worse the health risks are going to be. Quit telling us that the 12 or 9 million per whatever that you're testing for in the air is perfectly okay when you and I both know that's not what's going to kill people. It's those teeny tiny particles that you don't even bother to test for. Test for those, and then let's have an honest, transparent conversation. Please support our work here, folks, as I am a community advocate for one of the poorest communities in Louisiana. I am a minority here. I love my community. I'd like to see the children have a chance at a decent life. God bless you guys.